to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I am, of course, Andrew Barczyk, joined once again by my co-compatriot, Mr. Danny Miller himself. Danny, how has it been?
It's going okay, Andy. I mean, we've now flipped the calendar to May. The theme parks are starting to open. I just spent last Saturday at Six Flags New England, got to ride some Wicked Cyclone, got to ride some Superman, got to try out some VR on Mind Eraser, the new Galactic Attack VR on those new trains. Got to try out a whole bunch of stuff. Really starting to get the season going. Oh, wake up, Andy. We're done talking about Six Flags New England now. So.
Okay.
So gotten the season going here. It's been a few weeks since we did the Invader coverage and, the Mystic Timbers coverage. So most of the parks are starting to at least be open for the weekends now. And I think Kings Island this coming weekend starts to be open daily. A lot of the other parks are already starting to open for the weekends. So it's going to be Memorial Day weekend before you know it, which means Carowinds and Family Kingdom for me. And then in less than a month, we're going to Hollywood Nights again.
Yeah.
That big event down at Holiday World. So our season is getting ready to go here. And I think it is appropriate, Andy. Would you agree that it is appropriate that since the theme park and roller coaster season is underway, that we have a very roller coaster heavy topic tonight based on some conference calls that have been taking place, one in particular. This is the time of year where most of your big companies and chains do your first quarter conference calls, if you will. I think SeaWorld just had theirs earlier today. Cedar Fair and Six Flags have had theirs most recently. And the talk for the last week or so has been the Cedar Fair conference call where it was brought up that, we have quite a few roller coasters to expect from the Cedar Fair chain to open in 2018. Now, we know about some of them, but Andy, you and I are basically going to talk about these 4 roller coasters that we've been told that we're getting, and we're going to kind of go one by one and kind of talk about each one by one. 2 of them are very simple, but then two others we're going to have to do a bit more digging for.
Yeah, so at this conference call, it was stated that Cedar Fair would be getting 4 new coasters in 2018. 2 of them are refurbishments, which are pretty easy to decipher, so I guess we'll start there. That, you were already at King's Dominion this year. You've seen some of the construction already started with Hurler. That's obviously being RMC'd. We still don't have a very good idea of what's happening down there. I know from what you posted, it seemed like they had torn away a ton of the structure and are kind of almost starting with a somewhat of a blank slate, maybe?
They're starting to take away some of the lift, too, which is very strange. It's almost as if they're just starting anew here. I don't know how much of the structure is actually going to be kept, so I'm very intrigued to see what they actually do with Hurler.
Yeah. So Hurler, I think, will be really interesting to see what happens. And then, obviously, the entire enthusiast community, with the opening of Cedar Point this past weekend with their preview weekend, is freaking out over the ride formerly known as Mean Streak. And you know what, Danny Miller, and I say this every year, and this one especially to me, like people are, I can't even begin to answer or tell you how many times people have asked me about Mean Streak, what's going on with Mean Streak, and I'm just completely nonplussed about the entire situation. It's way too early for me to start getting excited about this. Like every single new picture, people are freaking out, and the one that kills me is the one that is close is that people have most recently posted of the inline twist going on. And they're like freaking out.
Right, a little
and literally, I'm like, people, it's an inversion. You can go have the same exact inversion at the front of the park on Raptor. It's currently open. You can go ride it there.
And Gatekeeper and Valraven. I mean, we've got the same sort of inversion on other rides in the park. I mean, what here and it sounds so we've already touched on Hurler, and everybody knows what's going. Hurler is interesting because everybody knows what's going on, but nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, we all know it's being RMC, but we don't know much more than that. Mean Streak is a very different scenario where, because it is such a large ride and it is in a prominent place somewhat that is easy to get to because of that road, and then also just because you can almost walk up to it in the park and it is so large and you can see it from so far away. There's no hiding what's going on with Mean Streak. As I think it was Tony Clark said in an interview, we don't have a tarp that big to really, put it underneath. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Mean Streak, we know it's being RMC'd. Right. We also know that it's got some sort of weird outside top hat. It's got this outside bank turn, if you will. It's got this little airtime pop that's almost like a double up into this stall or zero G or whatever you want to call it. We know that it's going to have a little bit of a sort of, as you like to call, a weeble wobble before the lift/launch. We don't know if it's going to be a lift or a launch. One would assume that at this point it might be a lift. We know that there's going to be a very, very small airtime hill that's just going to provide a real quick pop, much like Twisted Colossus at the bottom of the first drop, it looks like from some aerial photos. But at the end of the day, we don't know the entire layout. We don't know the name. But the layout is going to become apparent as they do more construction to it. And, I mean, for me, the people who are freaking out about Mean Streak, for me it's just kind of like, well, even if they don't tell us what's going on, we know what's going on, and as they do it, we're going to see it anyway. So by the time they actually announce something, we're going to know a lot. I feel like we're going to know a lot. So for me, it's kind of like, sit back, relax, and just, watch as the people who are freaking out post more pictures, because, at the end of the day, we're all going to find out together.
Danny Miller, I'm sitting here contemplating this topic right now of Mean Streak, and I'm thinking to myself, how many RMCs?
Well, Andy, Mean Streak closed. Mean Streak does not exist anymore.
Sorry. I'm contemplating how many RMCs run 3 trains.
Well, if you count Twisted Colossus, that's 1.
Yeah, but that's a special
Rod
case.
Cannot, Outlaw Run can't, Goliath can't, Wicked Cyclone can't, Iron Rattler can't. I think New Texas Giant has the ability to, because it is a mid-course.
But it only has 2.
So I believe it has 3. I think it has a red, a blue, and a black. It could be here. Well, share your thought. I will check this.
Well, okay, you're going to check into it.
Your thought.
So my thought here is,
I'll check this.
A park like Cedar Point is going to need 3 trains in my mind, and if RMC traditionally does not run 3. You wonder if, one, there's going to be a mid-course on this ride somewhere, which I think a lot of people would be upset by. Or, number 2, now, cue the tomatoes, will they put a shed on this ride?
Oh, jeez. Here we go. I'm looking at photos. I do see photos that include a red train, a blue train, and I also see a few photos of a black train. So now it's difficult to tell whether or not these are all from different times, but I do believe that I'm looking at the maintenance shed here. It does look like there are 3 different trains. And with the mid-course brake run, one would think that it has the ability to run all 3 at the same time. That does not necessarily mean that it runs 3 at any given time, but with the mid-course brake run, it does have the ability to run 3.
Well, I am going to go to a different source here and see what this different source says. And it does, RCDB does indeed say that it has 3 trains with 6 cars per train on it. So
It doesn't mean it always runs with 3 trains, but it does have the ability to run with 3 trains. But I guess the defining factor there would be a mid-course brake run. So not Joker, not Medusa, not Iron Rattler. I believe that New Texas Giant would be the only one with the ability to run 3 trains.
Now that's interesting because, to me, a lot of coasters have been shying away from the mid-course brake run concept. That everything that's been built in the last, 5-6 years is completely ignoring the mid-course. They are getting rid of that. You look at something like Banshee, and they're extending the brake run to allow more trains. Leviathan, Fury does the same thing. You wonder if Mean Streak is going to run a mid-course or if it's going to run 3 trains. And if it doesn't have a mid-course and it's going to need 3 trains, I don't think there's any question. They can't run 2 trains at Cedar Point. Not during, peak season.
Well, they could go the Fury route or the Leviathan route where the base of the lift hill is actually another block. So if they have a train that is out on the course and is not returned yet, but the next train in the station is ready to dispatch, they can dispatch it, and it can actually be held at the bottom of the lift. I experienced that last year when I went down to Carowinds during the Platinum Pass holder ERT on Fury. We were actually, because there were so few people on the train, we were dispatched while the train ahead of us was still on the lift, and we actually sat at the base of the lift, stopped until the train went over. Funny enough, because the trains were so empty, we actually got to the top of the lift before the train hit the brakes. So we actually got stopped at the very top of the lift, too, waiting for the train ahead of us to clear the first round of brakes. So you could do something like that as well. Another interesting point there is if it's a lift hill or a launch, because if it's a launch, you kind of lose that block, that lift hill block.
The lift hill,
if you do it,
the lift hill block's already out because of the Weevil Wobble, I think, because they have that Weevil Wobble before the lift.
Right. So that block, that block would essentially begin at the storage shed, just beyond the station.
Yeah,
so that's where that would be. That would be a block. So I mean, you could hold them there, and then your lift would essentially be an additional block, but without kind of a holding area there right at the base of the lift. Your holding area would actually have to be just beyond the station.
Well, here's another idea. You said during the Mystic Timbers show that you thought the shed would have been better served at the beginning of the ride. And now you have a scenario where the transfer track is actually at the beginning of the ride. So you could, in theory, put a shed there. And I love how we keep calling it a shed, but some sort of show.
Maybe.
And
I mean, with Mean Streak, there already was a shed there. It was just a storage shed.
Yeah, and well, true. See, Cedar Point does it first. Yeah, all the time. Now, and we've also heard that Cedar Fair has made a deal with this company that did the shed to do multiple rides. That we hear that there might be a new soundtrack for new rides. So I don't know. There's something here. And Danny, the reason why I bring all of this up is people are like, well, why can't they just open this up in 2017? And for all intents and purposes, the way they're moving on this
ride. For
ride.
Christ's sake, do people actually think that's still happening? If any of you watching this show still think that's happening, I am very, very ashamed of you.
But still, I think there's a reason why, and maybe they're going to add some more of this, some more of these items onto it, and make people. And that's what's going to take so long. I don't know. Just a thought. That's enough talk about that, I think.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we can see what's happening, so we're all pretty much finding out the new stuff together, and when they announce it, we'll know whatever we don't know. At this point, we've talked about they should RMC Mean Streak. They should RMC Mean Streak. We've been saying it for so long, and now that it's finally happening, we've known for so long that it was happening. It's kind of just there right now, and there's not really much to hype about it. I mean, everyone's been hyping it up. You can't hype it up anymore at this point, so we'll just have to wait and see what we get when they announce it.
So let's move on to the more interesting portion of this discussion, and there are two statements made by the officials at the Cedar Fair conference call. One statement was that one of these coasters in 2018 will represent a renewed relationship with a company that Cedar Fair has previously worked with, but has not worked with in recent years. And number two, a new coaster will be a brand new concept for roller coasters. And I'm not sure what that means, brand new concept, because I think, Danny, at this point, we can sit here and speculate all night long. We could be here for another 3 hours and speculate, and I could come up with some pretty wild ideas. But I think what you have to do is you have to break down what parks are, in theory, getting something, what are the rumors out there, and what's logically going to happen here? So maybe first we should eliminate the parks that we know aren't getting anything.
Okay. So let's. I got the Cedar Fair website up here. So why don't we just go in alphabetical order?
Okay.
And we'll talk about each park. And when we get to one that very clearly is not going to get one of these two coasters, we'll just cross it off and we'll see what we're left with. So alphabetically, we'll start with California's Great America. That seems to be one of the ones that is definitely in the running for maybe either of these two coasters. Some people talking about an intimate impulse coaster possibly, because that was mentioned in a previous, shareholders discussion. We also know that there is maybe a planned water coaster in the works at some point there. So maybe that could be the new concept, or maybe that's an Intamin or a Mac type ride. I mean, we know that Knott's has done some things with Mac in the past, so that could be the renewed relationship maybe. Although they've recently done work with Mac, so I don't know if that's maybe what they're talking about there. But I think California's Great America could potentially be in the running for either of those two coasters, if you will, either a new concept or the renewed relationship.
I would be willing to stake a lot on the fact that one of those two coasters will be going to California's Great America, just based on the previous the previous layout that they gave to the city officials, and now with this, I think it's almost certain that California's Great America is getting one of those two things. So let's move on, and we'll come back to that and talk about it. I think you want to go, or do you want to talk about it now? What do you want to do?
No. We'll look at it as a whole at the end. We'll just spend a minute or two on each one. So Great America, definitely one we're going to revisit. Next up is Canada's Wonderland. Now, this is an interesting one because this is a park that has been invested in fairly heavily in the last 5 years. I mean, we saw Leviathan, and then we saw Wonder Mountain's Guardian in 2014. We saw the flat ride Skyhawk 2016. Then 2017, we're seeing we have a water ride, and then also this Soaring Timbers flat ride. So definitely a park that has been getting good rides. Is it time for another coaster? 2012 is the last real coaster. 6 years with Leviathan. If you count Wonder Mountain's Guardian, which most do, you're still talking 4 years, but that's really more of a dark ride, a family type ride. The reason why I don't think it's Canada's Wonderland is because there is not a whole lot of competition there. And Canada's Wonderland does so well already just with flat rides. I think that I think they're kind of holding. I think it's another year or two before we see something there.
And
most people have been talking like B&M dive coaster there, or
Exactly.
maybe a wood coaster, and that doesn't really fit the bill for either of the two things we're talking about.
I could see in the future Canada's Wonderland, one of their two wood coasters getting the RMC treatment, depending on if these are successful in Cedar Fair, which you would assume they will be, since they've been so successful in Six Flags and other places. They've also talked about, a wing coaster. But none of those concepts fit these two categories, and that's where I don't see a brand new concept going to Canada's Wonderland, and I don't see this renewed relationship going there either. So that's why I think I see a B&M going there.
Only thing where. Yeah, I agree. Especially, they have a lot of coasters that don't have great capacity. The B&Ms really help that, so I think another B&M would do that park some good. Even a GCI. I think the only thing that might be possible is if Cedar Fair has purchased Cannon from Leesburg, which we're going to bring up with some of these other parks. But again, that is a low-capacity coaster.
Yeah.
So I don't now. They still have that plot of land where Skyrider was, and I think Cannon might fit there.
Yeah. Jesus.
So I think that's the only reason why I don't want to completely count out Canada's Wonderland. I could maybe see that happening. They're not afraid to put bad capacity rides there. But I just don't know that that's the best fit. So I'll leave that one in the running, but I think that's the very last one I'm going to pick.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to make any predictions there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so next up in the list alphabetically is Carowinds. Carowinds,
Well,
I think maybe if RMC Hurler is successful, maybe we see it at Carowinds. But again, I think the only thing you're really looking at for Carowinds here, with the addition of Fury and then the large investment of all the relocated flat rides this year, the Plants vs. Zombies last year and the water park, they've done 3 years of pretty good investments. I don't think Carowinds is next up, even though that's the park they've kind of been building up. I think that big $50 million expansion is kind of over with right now. So I think this is maybe a softer year for them.
But, I was a big proponent of Cannon. Now, it's funny that we keep talking about Cannon because nobody knows.
Coaster.
Yeah, because nobody knows where Cannon's going yet. Some people say it's just going to go to England and go to somewhere like Flamingo Land. That's fine. But if it's coming to the States, there are so many Cedar Fair parks that need a coaster like that it would fit nicely in their park. And I think Carowinds is towards the top of that list. Because, it's smaller, it's compact, you can put it almost anywhere. And like I said, Carowinds needs a launch coaster. It's the one thing in their collection that's really sorely missing. You have a Flyer, you have a Hyper, you have a Giga, you have an Invert. It's the launch coaster that would add that extra oomph to it that I think Carowinds is sorely lacking. And who's to say that even if it's not Cannon, maybe it's an Intamin ride like Cannon. Maybe they just build a new one. Who's to say this renewed relationship? A lot of people are jumping to Intamin. I'm not positive it's Intamin, but if it is, I think it's because they do good launch. It could be Mac, but yeah, it could be Mac. I don't know.
I mean, Mac has a couple of. Well, let's think about this for a second. What Mac rides have gone to Cedar Fair parks when they were Cedar Fair? Like the Ricochets at Kings Dominion and Carowinds were under the Paramount banner. So those don't really count. Really, the only ones that I can think of are if you go to Knott's.
Yeah.
You've got, Knott's Berry Farm. So you've got Sierra Sidewinder, which is one. Coast Rider is Mac, and I believe that was new. It wasn't relocated from somewhere.
That was
that's
brand new.
2.
Yeah.
So,
and that's not that long
you've
ago.
got that there.
Coast Rider was 2013. It's already 2017.
2013.
Coast Rider was 2013. That's what RCDB has.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
That's what's there.
It seems like it was just
could be.
yesterday.
I mean,
is that right, Coast Rider?
well, they're not talking about B&M, right? I mean,
No, that
B&M
is right.
and GCI have been too consistent, so they can't be talking about B&M or GCI because
No.
those have been too recent. So in my mind, it either has to be Intamin or Mac.
Yeah.
I would think. Let's go back to Cedar Fair coaster editions. I mean, we've had mostly B&Ms, we've had a couple GCIs. I mean, in 2011, what was the ride in 2011? What was the big Cedar Fair ride in 2011? 2012 was Leviathan. What was the 2011 ride? King's Dominion. No. 2010, we got the two Intimidators. Did we not, Jim? We're probably easily forgetting something here. I can't think of what. I can't think of what if Cedar Fair had the big roller coaster in 2011. What was it?
No.
Here we go. Wikipedia. Roller coasters introduced in 2011. We had Daredevil Dive, Cheetah Hunt, Black Diamond, Raptor Gardaland, New Texas Giant, Gotham City Gauntlet, the Green Lanterns, Takabisha, Timber Drop, Untamed. No, Wooden Warriors, Zip and Pippin. I don't see any 2011 Cedar Fair coasters here. So they did the two big editions with the two Intimidators in 2012 and then basically took a year off from big roller coasters. So then you saw B&M, and so the last Intamin really in Cedar Fair is 2010 with Intimidator, right? Because then in 2012 we had Leviathan, 2013 we had Gold Striker and Gatekeeper, 2014 we had Banshee, 2015 we had Fury, 2016 Valraven, 27 Mystic Timbers. So it's been all GCI and B&M really since 2010. 2009 was Diamondback. 2008 was Behemoth, and Diamondback was also that was the Prowler year. 2007 was Renegade. So we're really looking at. I mean, everyone's jumping to Intamin, right? But I make the argument that Mac is possible. Do I think that's what it is? No, I think it is Intamin based on the way it was phrased. But when you think about it, if you get a launch coaster new, it really could be Mac or Intamin. I mean, they both do the same style rides in terms of launch coasters. So I don't know. Carowinds maybe. But again, I think kind of towards the bottom of the list just because I think that expansion is kind of done with. Next up alphabetically is Cedar Point, and obviously we're ruling that out because of the RMC.
Yeah.
So fine. Next alphabetically would be Dorney Park.
Dorney never gets anything.
Yeah,
That's what it comes down to, right?
They wouldn't really get a new concept. So I think again, the only thing that maybe comes to Dorney is a Cannon or a ride like it.
Like they already have an Impulse. They already have, they have a lot of the little stuff that so I don't see them. Yeah, I just don't see it. I'd rule them out. I don't see them.
Yeah. Next up would be King's Dominion. We got RMC Hurler, so they get ruled out.
Yeah.
After that, we got King's Island, which you rule them out because of Mystic Timbers. I don't think we see them investing heavily in King's Island for a coaster, especially with Cedar Point getting something.
Yeah.
History has been the best teacher that King's Island and Cedar Point since both being under the Cedar Fair banner, they do not both open real headlining attractions in the same year. They tend to alternate, if anything, which is kind of what we're seeing recently. Knott's Berry Farm is the next one, and this is the one that a lot of people are going to here because of the removal of Boomerang, and people are talking about the new concept being the RMC Raptor or T-Rex possibly. And I don't think it's going to be a Raptor at Knott's Berry Farm, and if it is, I'll come on here and say that I was wrong. I just don't see the Raptor. I mean, we talked about this with the COASTER-net update last week and how small that track is. I just don't think a park of that size, in terms of foot traffic, I don't think a Raptor fits there. Now, a T-Rex might be a different story. Because the T-Rexes might have better capacity, but I don't know if you fit something in that boomerang plot unless you start working it to some of the other open plots of land there in the middle. But I just fear there's some limited space to work with there.
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Danny Miller, because I know one of the big arguments is, and I'm not sold that a Raptor track is going to Knott's Berry anyway, so I'm kind of with you on this, but for your capacity argument, let's take a look at some of their other rides. And I'm just going to list them for you.
Yeah.
Coast Rider, Montezuma, Pony Express, Sierra Sidewinder, Accelerator, all low capacity rides. All of them, every single one of them is a low cap ride.
The boomerang they just took out.
And on top of that, they don't really have a legit traditional sit-down coaster. They don't. Like, the only coaster that comes close to that definition is Accelerator, and it's basically a launch coaster with a little zippity-doo-dah. A top hat and some zippity-doo-dah at the end. They don't have...
Montezuma is basically the same thing, sit-down launch.
Like, they don't have a traditional first drop roller coaster, and maybe a Raptor track fits that bill. For those people saying Cannon out there, no, you fools, because Accelerator's the same ride.
If Knott's does a Raptor or something like it, what are we talking about in terms of size? Are we looking at 100 feet, like Lightning Run style ride? Or are we looking at something larger? Are we looking at something smaller?
Let me throw this out there. We see Vekoma making huge moves over in Europe right now. Like, Vekoma's building some serious roller coasters out there. And they haven't worked with Vekoma in a while. They have worked with Vekoma on many different boomerangs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is this where everyone's jumping on the RMC bandwagon just because all of a sudden they're RMCing some wood coasters? Is Knott's the place to put your RMC track? If I'm RMC, do I want it at Knott's Berry as the first place it goes? Maybe the first place to have an inversion. Maybe that's why.
I don't know.
It's
so tough for me to imagine a Raptor going into Knott's. I know it's the popular opinion. I'm just not sold on it. I haven't heard anything that makes me believe that yet.
How about this? Do you think an Intamin would go to Knott's? Or a different company? I could see an
Intamin. Well, I think Knott's is the best candidate for Mac because that's the park with the Mac history. With Sierra Sidewinder and Coast Rider. If they're going to renew a relationship with Mac, I think that's the park it goes into. What type of ride it is, I don't know.
It'd have to be a traditional sit-down, like a Blue Fire-esque.
Which Mac is now doing. I mean, that Flash/Lightning coaster.
Plus they're building the brand new coaster. They're building that brand new one out at Movie World in Australia. That we don't know what the name of that is yet. But they're building that we've seen. I've seen many pictures come out from there. Maybe this is tough.
But again, does that go back does a launch idea from Mac just clash with accelerators?
I don't think we'll see a launch. I think it has to be a traditional lift hill that we see. And maybe.
I mean, the fact that they've got 3 launch coasters there between Montezuma, Pony Express, and Accelerator, I just don't see another one, which
no,
is more.
it doesn't make any sense.
I guess that's more. That's more support for the Raptor, but I don't know. I just have a real hard time seeing a park with that foot traffic.
You know, a traditional Mac coaster.
A traditional Mac, yeah.
You know,
I could see a traditional Mac.
Like, not everything has to be Helix or anything, you know, or Blue Fire has a launch on it, doesn't it? Okay, let's go to the next one, because I think Knott's is interesting, and I would also say Knott's is high on this list because of the removal of Boomerang. But that doesn't mean that it's a coaster.
Well, if they weren't taking out Boomerang, I don't think people would be speculating that much.
Not at all.
Knott's.
No one would be talking about Knott's right now if they didn't remove Boomerang. And
the fact that it came out and it's coming out early is the problem.
Well, it's a year-round park, so it's got to come out sometime. So, like, that's...
Well, and historically, Knott's has had no problems having December openings. I think Silver Bullet and Ghost Rider were both December openings, if I remember correctly. That's a while back. But next up on the list would be Michigan's Adventure.
Okay, keep going. Although I would love to see them. I would love to see them get something. I'd love to see Michigan's Adventure get a new coaster. But I just don't see it happening.
I agree.
I don't see it happen. And here's why,
if
Danny Miller.
Michigan's Adventure got a new coaster in 2018, I would go. Because I would go back to that park and ride Shivering Timbers.
But here's why. Cedar Point is now making a renewed effort for the Chicago market. So they are not going to put in a new coaster at Michigan's Adventure to draw away from Cedar Point for people to go to Michigan's Adventure. That doesn't make any sense. That they're making a huge push this year to get people from Chicago with all the new hotel expansions and the new Sports Force Park and all that.
Yeah, and when you're pulling from Chicago, when you're in Cedar Point's position, you're also pulling from everywhere between Chicago and Sandusky, which includes Detroit, it includes Toledo, it includes South Bend, it includes Grand Rapids, it includes Muskegon, even though there's a park up there. So, again, I think it's the same idea. I mean, people don't realize that Michigan's Adventure is about the same distance away from Cedar Point as Kings Island is, maybe a little bit further, just in the opposite direction. It's north instead of south. So, to invest in Michigan's Adventure and Cedar Point in the same year would be foolish, especially when they never invest in Michigan's Adventure.
Exactly.
So, it would be foolish to do it on a year where they invest in Cedar Point. So I think Michigan's Adventure gets ruled out for that. Aside from the fact that they never invest there, I think you can rule out Michigan's Adventure just because Cedar Point is getting this major addition.
Absolutely. So what's up next?
Okay. Valley Fair.
Well, Valley Fair is interesting, and I'm going to say why Valley Fair is interesting, because I've heard rumblings all of a sudden that Valley Fair is next in line.
The next one to get the Carowinds treatment.
Because, and if you think about it, it makes sense that there's no other park for at least 7 hours. Great America is its only competition that's 7 hours away. You think about East Coast and how many parks you can hit in 7 hours, and it's ridiculous to even say they're competition. They're in a major market of a major city. There's a built-in attraction already there with the Mall of America, and I think Valley Fair might be poised to see some money. I'm not saying we're going to see a giga there. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying that we're going to see that we have not seen investment since Renegade, coaster-wise, down at Valley Fair. I think we might begin to see some investment there. Maybe the problem is they already have
wait
a lot
a minute,
of
they got the Dragon Coaster relocated there from Dorney Park, if I remember correctly. Hold on, let me check this.
Yeah, they did.
I know that Dragon Coaster went somewhere. Yes, it did. The Cosmic Coaster opened in 2011. That was the Cedar Fair coaster in 2011. 2011. There we go. We found it. The Cosmic Coaster at Valley Fair was the 2011 Cedar Fair coaster.
Could you imagine if that happened Could you imagine if that happened now? Like, people are upset that Mystic Timbers is the only thing Cedar Fair got this year. Could you imagine if they got nothing and all you got was a Cosmic Coaster that was relocated? Could you imagine?
God, people would...
Oh, my... Could you even...
Well, people would be very upset. I mean...
So
for some reason, I still want to believe that there was another 2011 coaster, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't.
I looked at the 7 pages of every coaster built in 2011 on our CDB, and none of them are Cedar Fair. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So back to Valley Fair. The problem is the park. It seems to me that the park doesn't have a lot of space to expand. It seems like it could. There's a lot of stuff there. There's some open areas you could build stuff, but you already have a hyper in Wild Thing, which isn't all that spectacular. You have your Excalibur, which I think is a really good ride, but some people don't like it. You have Renegade as a solid wood coaster. You have a classic wood coaster with the high roller. You have an Impulse. You have a Pipe Scream. It's like, what else? You don't have an invert.
The corkscrew.
You don't have an invert, but that doesn't fit.
No, you don't have a true invert.
That doesn't fit that doesn't fit the
mouse.
It doesn't fit the new or the renewed relationship. So I don't know. I think we'll see an invert there eventually, but not next year.
Okay. Last, Worlds of Fun. And this one, I think, is the other intriguing one that nobody's talking about that you and I think may have some legs because there's been some land clearing going on. They just got a new entrance. The Worlds of Fun seems like it may be the wild card because...
Well, you go back to investment. 2009, Danny Miller. 2009 is the last time they spent any money. You're almost talking about a decade of not having a new coaster. Prowler was their last new coaster.
Well, you can make the same argument for Valley Fair, though.
Well, yeah. I agree. Absolutely. And that's why I'm thinking when we're talking about both those parks now, because I think they're poised to make a move. And I think the clearing next to the entrance, between the entrance and Prowler, is interesting. People have always said Timberwolf is a prime candidate for RMCing as well. There's a lot of options there. And once again, Cannon fits very well into that park, Danny Miller. They lack a launch coaster.
Do you think that Worlds of Fun could be getting invested in because of the emergence of Silver Dollar City as a major destination in that region? With the addition of Outlaw Run and Silver Dollar City's getting a coaster in 2018, do you think that this is a response from Cedar Fair there? Because when you think about that part of the Midwest, when we talk about Midwest, we kind of think Cedar Point, Great America, and whatnot. When you think of the southern Southwest, or when you think of the Southwest, you think Texas. But if you think about the southern Midwest, and you're talking about like Missouri, Arkansas, Nebraska, Kansas, really Missouri is the big area there with your parks. You've got Six Flags St. Louis, which even though they got the Justice League, has been badly neglected for the last decade. Silver Dollar City has gotten a lot of attention from Hershend. They got Outlaw Run. They're getting a new coaster in 2018. They had an expanded kids area twice. I think they got expanded kids areas in the last several years. Worlds of Fun hasn't really seen a whole lot, so I think that it's far enough away from Cedar Point.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not in competition.
No.
So... And the difference between Worlds of Fun and Valley Fair, I think, is the fact that Worlds of Fun has more direct competition for the Kansas City market and from surrounding markets, whereas Valley Fair is really only competing with Great America, but it's not really competing with Great America. Mount Olympus doesn't really seem like it's competition for Valley Fair in so many words, because that's really a water park type of thing. And I think Worlds of Fun might be logical here.
And here's why I like Worlds of Fun, too. Because I don't see them investing a Fury-type $24 million into Worlds of Fun. I could see them investing a $10 to $13 million ride, which I think with this, I think you also have to temper your expectations, because if you're putting in 4 of these rides, the RMCs are going to at least cost you $10 to $15 million each. Okay. In theory, that you're probably going to be paying,
even
around
a small one, yeah.
Even a
Storm
small
Chaser
one
was 15. So.
Yeah. So, you look at Mean Streak, that's going to be a lot bigger. So these other installations are going to have to be pretty small. And that's why when you talk about, Cannon, it's a relocated coaster. It's renewing a relationship with Intamin. Intamin's going to have to be involved to move it, to set it up, to get the ride systems back online. So Intamin's going to have to be involved in that process. You could be talking about an impulse coaster, like we've said before. Worlds of Fun, it kind of, in my mind, fits this bill of a small $10 million investment to revitalize Worlds of Fun and maybe get people talking about it again. Whereas Valley Fair, I think Valley Fair, you are talking a $20 million ride going in there. Maybe just one big $20 million invert, something, or, 15 to 17, something a little more sizable. Worlds of Fun, I think you already have a pretty complete park with Patriot, with Mamba, with Prowler. Like, those are 3 big rides. You add a launch coaster like Cannon or maybe it's even the Impulse. Maybe people are assuming the Impulse is going to California, but maybe the Impulse goes to Worlds of Fun. Maybe Wicked Twister moves to Worlds of Fun.
Okay, so let's break this down now. The parks that we haven't officially really eliminated here, we've got Great America, Canada's Wonderland, Carowinds. Are you eliminating Dorney?
Yes.
Okay. So Great America, Wonderland, Carowinds, Valley Fair, Worlds of Fun. We need and Knott's. So we've got 6 parks there. 2 of them are getting coasters. Do you want to say that California's Great America is definitely getting one of them?
See, I think based on the city planning thing, they have to. But
I think so too. I think you have to pencil one in there.
I do too.
So okay, so if you and I are in agreement that California's Great America is getting one of the 2 coasters, which one do you think is more likely? Let's do it this way. Which one do you think is more likely to go there?
If I have
think it's the Impulse or an Impulse?
I think it's either a new Impulse or Wicked Twister. I could see one of those 2 things going to California.
Okay, so that would satisfy the renewed relationship requirement with Intimate. Yeah. I think it would be a new. I think it would be a new Impulse. I don't know that Wicked Twister is coming out. So let's say that. Let's say we're going to go with an Impulse coaster from Intamin new to California's Great America. Knowing that, we've got 5 parks left, and we know that this last coaster has to be a new concept, whether or not that's an RMC T-Rex or whatnot. So that leaves Canada's Wonderland, Carowinds, Knott's Berry Farm, Valley Fair, and Worlds of Fun. Which one of those parks do you think is most likely to get a never-before-seen concept? And that depends. I guess that depends on what the concept is, right?
I really hate this discussion right now because I was dead set on It's leading
back to Knott's Berry Farm getting the Raptor. Is what it's doing. And that's what it's leading us back to. As much as you and I don't think it leads back to that, and I think
it does.
See, and here's the thing. You and I have talked about this. And I've said to you, it just strikes me as, because we talk about Cedar Point and Kings Island never investing largely in the same year. And even though Knott's and California's Great America are 5 hours apart and they pull from completely different markets, it would just strike me as a tad strange to see both of those parks get big investments in the same year. It just wouldn't strike me as something that they would do. it would just seem a bit off to me. But when you think about the new concept, it leads you back to Knott's Berry Farm. But I mean, Canada's Wonderland was the first one to try out the Triotech Dark Ride, so maybe there's a little bit there. Carowinds, they really. Do you want to? If it's a new concept, would you rule out Carowinds?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a new concept going into Carowinds.
No, not after all the investing they've done. I think the time has passed for them to do something new and exciting in Carowinds, I think. Do they put a new concept in a small park like Valley Fair or even Worlds of Fun? I think Worlds of Fun is more – would you agree that Worlds of Fun is more likely than Valley Fair?
Worlds of Fun is more likely. I think the only wild card is this. Is we assumed California's Great America was getting the impulse. If we don't assume that,
well, that's why I took this discussion the way I did, because my logic was, if you assume that the Intamin or the Impulse or whatever it is and the renewed relationship coaster is going to Great America, then you all of a sudden limit your options for where the new concept can go, because I don't think they put the new concept in Carowinds. I think the window has passed. The window of opportunity to do that has passed, and I don't think they put it in one of their small parks. So if you go back and do a new concept type ride in Great America, whether it's some new type of water coaster
and I said,
or something like that.
And I said, what if B&M has developed a water coaster, or we see things like
even a 4D,
or we see something like a Pulsar. Maybe another company has something like that. Because the one thing that struck me on the city planning thing was that they said that there was going to be a water coaster at California's Great America, and Cedar Fair has never built a water coaster before, or is it? Here's something else. Are these two different rides? So people are jumping on the 4 rides. Is it 3 rides? Is it 3 rides?
Well, and that's what I wondered, because here's the thing. If you build a Mack water coaster that's a little different than what we've seen before, that technically would satisfy, or an Intamin, that would satisfy both, like an Aquatrax, that would satisfy both of those requirements.
Yeah.
So now,
maybe it's not 4?
Hold on. Can we get the – hold on. I have a screenshot of the actual quote here on my phone. I'm gonna go back and look at this exact quote. So the quote says, "Here's some exciting news. Multiple high-impact attractions. Cedar Fair's CEO said that they are building a, quote, completely new type of coaster, a dramatic transformation of 2 of our historical wooden coasters, and a renewed relationship with a manufacturer whom we have worked with in our recent history that will add another coaster and deepen our pool of ride manufacturers." So, hold on. Let me read that last part again. A manufacturer who we have worked with in recent history that will add another coaster and deepen our pool of ride manufacturers. A renewed relationship with a manufacturer who we have worked with in recent history. If it's Intamin, is 7 years considered recent history at this point?
Who else? But Mac is late. Mac is 2013, so it's not like
that's 4 years.
So it's not like it's
that more recent.
Well, yeah, but still, I don't think you can qualify recent by the span of a year. Well, a year is recent, but 2 years, no.
And it'll deepen our pool of ride manufacturers. So that's not B&M or GCI, because they've already got those in their hip pocket. Yeah. And they're adding RMC. So it's renewing a relationship with Intamin or Mac is what I feel that has to be. But the way that that's worded, a completely new type of coaster, a dramatic transformation of tour, and it's worded as if it's 4.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, if you don't assume that CGA gets the impulse, it opens up all the rest of them to getting an Intamin or Mac coaster. And then you just have to deal with the new ride concept, which could go to CGA, which I guess.
Is there anything saying CGA couldn't be a Raptor or a T-Rex?
No, I think CGA, knowing the space of the park from going to Great America and Chicago all the time, I think a Raptor might fit nicely there. Plus, it's just the low capacity of the Raptor. That's like, unless they're going to do something.
The Raptor to me is built for a small park like Silverwood. If we were gonna see, now here's the thing: if the new concept is referring to T-Rex and not Raptor, then throw all this discussion out the window, because I could see a T-Rex going to Knott's, I could see a T-Rex going to Great America. If it's a Raptor, I don't see it going to any of these parks really. Maybe Valley Fair, but just because of its size. But I think if you're talking T-Rex, I think this discussion changes dramatically.
Now, here's a question, Mr. Engineer. Is this just a matter of scale? So between the Raptor and T-Rex, so if they test the Raptor, we know from the update that they're testing Raptor track. We know this is fact. Is the move to T-Rex then just a matter of scale, and they don't really need to retest it?
Basically.
They would need new trains, but you could just, in theory, take the same train and expand it.
Let me let you in on a little insight as to something we're doing at my job without specifically. We are currently building a forklift that is essentially identical to a previous model, but the operator platform goes up and down. And the previous model, it did not. It only went up and down when the forks went up and down. And we're essentially copying a lot of the previous model that didn't have the raisable operator compartment. And because we're copying a lot of it, we don't have to retest. We don't have to redo a lot of our analytical work. So along those same lines, if the Raptor works, in theory, there shouldn't be problems scaling it up. Cedar Fair is actually a very good example of this. Accelerator in 2002 was built as sort of a test to see if Top Thrill Dragster would work and to see what issues they would have. Now, again, when you scale it up, it doesn't always work exactly as planned, but it was sort of a proof of concept that it could be done and that the idea could work.
So maybe,
I think that's kind of what we're seeing here.
So maybe just because we see Raptor track at the RMC factory does not necessarily mean that Raptor track would go to one of the, maybe Silverwood still gets the Raptor track,
but here's the other thing that comes into play there. The other thing that comes into play is that RMC has publicly said that they have 3 projects for 2018, and we've talked about 2 of them tonight. There's only one more, aside from Mean Streak and Hurler. And if it's Silverwood, that means there's not an RMC otherwise included here.
Let's go back to the beginning of the discussion now and say, why is Cedar Point building Mean Streak at this time of the year? Maybe the 3 projects doesn't count Mean Streak because
maybe that's not a 20. But no. They said, hold on. I have the article right here. I just so happen to have the article right here.
Honest to God, what if the RMC track on Mean Streak is done by the end of the season? So then they can have the entire off season to build whatever they want out in California. Like, honest, I
want to see what the actual words.
Well, here's my question for you as you look that up. Do you believe that means that the physical track work will be done by the end of the 2017 season at Cedar Point?
I think it's very likely that all or most of the track workers. Okay, I found the quote. And the quote leaves this a bit more open-ended. It talks about Rocky Mountain Construction delivers an impressive quartet. The aforementioned lightning rod and the massive terrain wildfire coasters acers usually can only dream of a park building. With such a fantastic batting record, it's all the more surprising not to see a new RMC project for 2017. But hang on. The company says we should see at least 3 in 2018. So they say at least 3. However, most people I've spoken to have said that it is 3. And a good friend of mine, a good friend of ours who may or may not have done some wonderful documentaries in the past, has said with pretty large confidence that RMC did not enjoy the 4 projects and said it was too much. And, you know, with the issues Lightning Rod and also Wildfire had, it would stand to reason that 4 is maybe too much for 1 year. So 3 seems to be the magic number. So if 3 is the magic number and we already know of the 2 Iron Horses, there's only 1 more, which means if we make that assumption, we're not seeing one at Knott's and Silverwood.
But my point here is that if track work is done by September on Mean Street.
I think that's reading too much into it.
But I'm just saying, if track work is done, that means you only have 2 other projects. And who's to say how far Hurler's going to be by September? So you're telling me that RMC is just going to build one Raptor
with this
track?
Mean Street stuff here.
But the damn thing is almost done.
Not really. Winter Chill Out was what, 3 months ago, and they had that top hat done. All they've done since then is the outside bank turn and half of like a roll. I mean, if we're talking new Texas Giant size here or bigger, this ride isn't even close to halfway done yet, and it's been three months. It'll be at least another 6 to 9 before track work is done, and that already gets us into the winter. And then you still have the testing, you still have the commissioning. I mean, just because the track work is complete doesn't mean they're done. They still have to commission the ride. I mean, now again, I think sometime early to midwinter, you're talking about track work being done. But, I mean, especially if this is such a radical transformation, they're going to have to build more structure. They probably still have to take down more structure. I think that's reading a bit too much into it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find it, like, I'm trying to piece it all together. The information is here. We just can't piece it together. It's a puzzle. We have all the pieces, but we can't put it together right now. That's the issue, is that some things just aren't sticking together.
Well, do you want to – I mean, we've been going on for quite a while here tonight, and I think we've had good discussion. I don't think – you know, a lot of the times you and I do these hour-and-a-half shows, and, you know, afterwards we say, well, about a half an hour of that was garbage. I think we've had a lot of good discussion here and a lot of good back and forth, and I think people will kind of see the reasoning here for the most part and follow us. But do we want to end this show by making an official prediction at some point? Because we know we have the 2 Iron Horses. Do we want to actually make a collective prediction here before the night is over, or do we want to revisit this?
Here's my problem. My problem is the most likely answer is one I don't really like. I don't really like the most likely answer, and that is I think the most likely answer is an impulse at CGA and some sort of Raptor or T-Rex track at Knott's. I think that's the most likely answer. I'd be better if it's T-Rex.
But then everything we did about Silverwood goes out the window.
Well,
in all likelihood,
sometimes
with that prediction.
Yeah, sometimes we make shit up here, you know?
Well, yeah, I don't think we're making shit up. I genuinely think that Silverwood is still. I still think Silverwood is the more likely answer. The only reason people think that it's going to Knott's is the fact is that the goddamn boomerang's been coming, but they've been talking about taking that boomerang out for years.
Maybe Knott's is getting a flat ride. Maybe Knott's is getting some new flat ride for all we know. Or maybe a new water ride. Maybe the water coaster is going to Knott's. They only have a raft ride there now. They took out their shoot the chutes ride. Maybe they're getting a water coaster that would fit nicely on the boardwalk.
I mean, they have Timber Mountain log ride, right?
Well, they have that too. But I'm talking about like a water coaster, like Aquatrax, something like that. They took out their Riptide. They took out their Shoot the Chutes. Those are two rides that people can cool off on, and in California, you need that. I don't know, Danny. I'm not ready to make a prediction. You can if you wish.
I'm not ready to make a prediction, but I feel like people want one. So
do it.
If I want to say an as of now, I before I make an official prediction, this is exactly what I think is going to happen. I'm not ready to do that yet, but if people want an as of now, 11:05 p.m. Eastern time on May 9th, 2017 is what time it is right now. I would say you've got New Mean Streak RMC at Cedar Point, obviously. You've got the RMC Hurler at Kings Dominion, obviously. I'll say an Intamin Impulse Coaster at California's Great America. And I backed myself into the same corner that we backed ourselves in over the last half hour.
You did.
I will say...
I am going to make a prediction.
I'll go with Worlds of Fun. I'll say Worlds of Fun. I'll say Worlds of Fun is going to get something new and exciting. I don't know what it is, and a completely new type of coaster.
I got it.
I don't.
My prediction is Worlds of Fun is getting Canon in, and CGA is getting a water coaster, a brand new water coaster concept. Dunzo.
I would support that. I would support that as well. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. That's probably even. I think that's very, very possible. And if we were going to make a group prediction and have to agree on one, I would have no problem going with yours over mine. The only reason I think it's maybe the impulse is because we actually heard that in like one of the last conference calls.
They did,
I think it was described in detail, which is why I tend to lean towards that. But I think your four parks are Cedar Point, Kings Dominion, Great America, and Worlds of Fun, because it spreads out the investment. You're not focusing on one area more than another. I just think it makes more sense right now for the company to go to Worlds of Fun as opposed to Knott's.
I agree.
I mean, they've invested a lot of money in Knott's the last several years. I mean, between Voyage to the Iron Reef, the refurb of the whole boardwalk section with Coast Rider, they redid the Timber Mountain Long Ride, they redid the Calico Mine Ride, they just redid Ghost Rider. It just seems odd that they would go right back there again.
No,
the last 4
agree.
years, they've had significant investments, and I just have a hard time buying that they would invest in both California parks in the same year. Even I know they're far apart, and I know it's not the same as Kings Island and Cedar Point. I know they draw from two completely different markets, but
and who's to say
and I know
Knott's
is in a very competitive market, but.
Maybe Knott's is 2019 too. Like who's to say Knott's is 2018? Maybe Knott's is 2019. So I don't know.
It could be. I don't know.
Because there's nothing poised for 2019 right now.
No, I'm going Cedar Point, Kings Dominion, Great America, and Worlds of Fun right now. As of right now, that's where I'm going.
I like it.
Which is in the minority, but I think, are you and I in agreement that those are the four parks as of right now?
I would be okay with that. I think three of the four are obvious, I think, and I think that fourth one is a debate, but I like better Worlds of Fun. Because I think that park needs something new, more so than Knott's needs something new. A coaster, unless it's huge at Knott's, is not going to make an impact. You put a Raptor track at Knott's, Nobody cares. Six Flags Magic Mountain is an hour north. They have far better things than what Raptor Track's going to give you. Twisted Colossus is going to be a better ride than whatever Raptor Track is there. Like, I find it hard to believe that Raptor Track's going to be the new thing.
Yeah, I mean, Knott's has tried the roller coaster deal before, and it has proven to just not be that big a draw. Knott's is a different audience. Knott's is a different type of park. Great America, I understand it because their competition is Discovery Kingdom, and it's really those two parks battling it out for a huge market in the Bay Area between Sacramento, San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland. That's a huge area to draw from. I can see why they're going after Great America. I am not surprised if Cedar Fair is content with just keeping Knott's where they are and just doing the smaller investments and just little improvements here and there. I think that's the type of park they are at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we should end it there for tonight. I think we've talked long enough here. You can chime in with your own ideas down in the comment section. I know you will. You'll have a plethora of ideas, and hopefully
excellent discussion though.
Hopefully you've watched the whole show before you comment.
This is much more exciting than talking about Mean Streak for the next 9 months.
That's true. So, as always, I am Andy Rabarchak from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, Ride on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, guys.